everyone. I think we've all expressed our absolute delight to be here together, face to face instead of on Zoom or Teams or whatever it might be. So yeah, just very chuffed to be here. For those who don't know, I'm Andre du Toit, represent a company called SATIB Insurance Brokers, who are leaders in tourism, incident management, and risk management, essentially. So we operate throughout Africa, primarily focused in the SADC region though, and we essentially started about 30 years ago. We started insuring rhino in transit, actually, and then it became about the Land Cruiser and the lodge and the liability. So over 30 years from a family-owned business, we are now in a very strong position to be able to provide what we believe are our ultimate risk management strategies and insurance products for the industry. Very fortunate to have a large grouping of clients going into the East African islands as well, and 16 branch offices because we believe in local relationships. So we've got a wide footprint, not because we want to have office space everywhere. In fact, we've cut back on that drastically in the last few months, but because it's all about relationships at the end of the day, and it's about having trusted people in the risk management space. So today, really, I'm going to be chatting about what we are. I'm not going to be dwelling on the past 18 months, that's for sure. There's a lot gone down in the insurance space, as you're well aware of. But what we've learned out of the last 18 months and what we can take from that and how we can apply it to the future of risk management. And along with that, what has changed in the same space, because it has. There's been a huge amount of change, and we've had to bring in new products. We've got new exposures that I'll let you know about. I'm sure you're already aware of them, but it's dynamic and it's changing. But I think what is absolutely key is that we are facing a sort of constant of adversity. It's changed the way we look at things, whether it's whether it's the way we do business, whether it's the fact that we've gone online, whether it's the fact that we've had to pivot and change our businesses. Some of us have started microbreweries instead of tourism. Whatever the case might be, we've certainly had to be agile, and that is going to be the future. It's about the fast fish eating the slow fish. That's really what it's about these days. So we've got to be quick, we've got to move, we've got to digitize, we've got to do all of these things in business. And nothing's different in terms of risk management. We're going to have to change the way we do things, and we're going to have to find cover for things we didn't have to find cover for before. So the best way to predict the future, I believe, is to create it. It's exactly what Sarah said. You've got to take ownership of what you can. Dave mentioned it as well. Control what you can, transfer the rest as far as risk management is concerned. So just quickly to pan out for a second, if I can, just to try and put a few things in perspective. Obviously, global warming has had a huge effect on risk throughout the world and globally. Hyper floods, hyper tides, fires, devastating fires across Australia and whatnot, all as a result of global warming. That itself has affected food security. Food security increases poverty around the world. Poverty results in compromised security. So there have been political unrest, there's been mass demonstrations, there's been all sorts of things like this. And it doesn't necessarily affect your world until we had looting in KZN recently. So all of these things are very real, and goodness knows where they come from, but they are there, they're constant, and they are increasing in severity, and they're increasing in frequency, and that's how we measure risk. It's that little balance between severity and frequency. And COVID, I believe, has exacerbated a lot of these potential risks, poverty space particularly, which has given rise to essentially what we saw in KZN recently. Cyber risk has gone through the roof. Absolutely through the roof. I'll speak about it a little bit later going on, but I mean, every single one of you should have cyber protection in place. Whether it's a tech stack that speaks to mitigating risk, or whether it's a liability policy that protects you when all your personal information and that of your clients is now compromised. Theft has increased. Little things like us having a wonderful domestic market that responded and kept a lot of us alive for a while, but that has come with its own risks. It's a very different guest profile, hasn't it? And just chatting to the guys yesterday, increase in malicious damage in the rooms, theft of contents, whether it's a TV or a gown or whatever the case might be. It's a massive increase. And bilking, which is when people leave without paying. So these are things that have increased dramatically over the last 18 months. So bittersweet, but we need to manage it. We have an ability to control it, and we need to manage it, understand it. And then obviously travel restrictions have placed all sorts of challenges in our space. Can we manage it? If we can't, how do we transfer it? Is there a product out there that can now cater for COVID delays and whatever the case might be? So that's really just panning out for a sec. And we're going to drill into a few of the things that we need to in the next few slides. So there's 3 ways to manage risk. Essentially, as we speak about it, you remove it. And, you know, some people have had to move out of tourism and start something else up. But the fact that you're here today means that you're going to take it on. And I think, thank goodness, we're in a very positive position looking forward. So remove it's not an option for us. We can manage it, which is you taking ownership. David mentioned it, take control of what you can. And that's really where most of the emphasis is going to be on, really, in this room, because there's a huge amount that you can manage. And the nice thing about that space is that you are in control. You understand your businesses. This is a hell of a diverse sector of tourism. Whether you're a marine operator, a wheels operator, whether you're hiking in the Berg, bird watching in a rainforest, or managing a lodge or a cultural tour, it's very diverse, the adventure space. So we're not going to sit up here and tell you how to run your business. You need to cooperate with your peers in the industry, find out what best practices, get your qualifications, etc., but manage your risk. No one understands it better than you. We'll touch on that, but I'm not going to sit and preach to a bunch of experts out there today. And we come into the space of transfer. So what you can't manage, you need to transfer. And typically speaking, in this environment, it's insurance, and I will mention incident management, because insurance stuff happens. Okay, you can replace a car or you can replace a laptop. That's easy enough. You're not going to sweat it. But when it comes to replacing a quantum, or you lose a lodge in a fire, or a boat gets flipped, or you end up with a liability claim that goes into the tens, if not hundreds of millions, that's the risk that you transfer. And on the incident management side, and we're going to speak about it in a little bit more depth, it's pretty much a fact that most of us in the room are in it to run hospitality, guided, memorable experiences. We're not drilled on a daily basis around incident management, thankfully. So it's another risk that you would be wise to transfer to a subscriber service or incident management center that actually deals with incidents on a daily basis. We're going to touch on those 2 elements as well.
In that transfer space is just to remember that when you transfer risk, you're actually transferring a very, very serious
aspect of your business that's going to protect you when the pawpaw hits the fan. So you're not just going to transfer that to any old person. You need to find specialists in the industry who understand your business intimately and who you can trust. Okay, there's been a lot of mistrust that has come to the surface over the last 18 months around insurance. So it's absolutely critical. And believe, trust me, that we can chat about it over a beer later. The insurance market is on its head, absolutely on its head. The traditional insurers that were there before have not necessarily got an appetite for tourism anymore. So you need to go through a trusted broker, dare I say, SATIB as an example, to guide you in that direction. Find a trusted advisor. And let them guide you properly. So when it comes to ownership, it's a given that compliance is the first place to start. All right. There are their rules, their regulations, their standards within the industry. If they're not regulated or legislated standards, then find out from a guy who's considered a best operator in the industry. Mark Brown's not here, but I always use him as an example, and maybe he's online. How's it, Mark, if you are? But Mark Brown brought, as you probably know, brought Canopy Tours to South Africa. And he sat and developed standard operating procedures for that industry that are now awaiting draft and approval. So you are the experts in your particular sectors in adventure tourism. Get out there, collaborate with your peers, and set your own operating standards. Obviously, the marine industry is very regulated, civil aviation, the aviation side, very regulated. But where you can, make that difference and do your self-regulation elements yourself. Policies, requirements, like I say, these are all sort of fairly repetitive, but you know what you need to do. If you need operating permits in a particular sector, if you need qualified guide, or you do need qualified guides, we know that's a little bit of a mess in that sector. And if the right qualifications don't necessarily exist, you need to do more. You need to, if you want a specific area that doesn't have a regulated guiding qualification, don't just wipe your brow and say, oh, great, we got away with that. Because in the court of law, it's going to say, have you acted as a reasonable person? Have you trained your staff to a reasonable level to ensure safety in that particular activity? So, like I say, the whole theme around this element is taking ownership and actually managing your risk, because the reputation of the industry depends on it. And we obviously, from an adventure sector, we're wanting to position ourselves as a go-to destination globally. So we need to pull up our socks then. And then law and transparency. Make sure you declare fully what it is and how you operate your business. Don't try to sweep things out of the carpet. Promise you it comes out at claims time. So that's the compliance side. So how do we look into the future? What are we doing with this now massive new influx of tourists that we're going to get? Natalia, I think you mentioned it in one of our webinars recently. It's a whole lot easier to switch off than it is to switch on. Okay, so we've had 18 months where, or certainly a stop-start 18 months where staff have perhaps got a little bit lax. You may have had to put staff off. You may have you needing new staff to come on board to deal with the increase in capacity. It's absolutely vital to, and I'm going to whiz through this because I know I'm going to be preaching to a lot of the converted here, but it's just a little bit of a refresher. It's a reboot. Staff in a risk management space, staff essentially are your eyes. Okay, you can't be that person who writes the risk management policy and you shove it in drawer 13 and that's where it sits, right? You've got to induct your staff. And it doesn't mean boat people must know the boat side and people on this side must only be in that environment. Get your staff to move around your organization. They must be front of house. They must go on boat trips. They must spend a day in the kitchen, whether he's a skipper or whatever the case might be. Get them to understand those different risk environments. And it will only help you understand your risk better and be able to identify hazards in that space. Indemnities, it doesn't matter if someone's come from another, and I'm using the boat environment, I suppose, because we're here. But if someone's come from another operation, operating with a whale watching unit, and they're coming through to yours, make sure they understand your business, your philosophy, your values, because it always helps plug that gap. Indemnities, briefings, COVID protocols, those are essential parts of a operational reboot. Check your indemnities. Are they updated? Do they take this changed environment into consideration? Go online. You can do it these days. You don't have to have paper. Marie-Louise, move on to digital. You can do these things. Operational briefings are key. We had wonderful briefing this morning before the whale watching. There was a video presentation. We went on to the boat. Aspects of that environment were repeated. So you can't just get away with a one-shot story. Whilst we were out there and we went, I think the term is beam to, potentially, to the swell, the boat rocked a little bit. There was a repeated reminder just to hang on to the bars, whatever the case might be. Just never stop touching point with the environment that you're in and how it's changing and how you need to keep your guests updated and briefed on risk. A lot of people will shy away from it during an orientation chat because they think, oh, it's a scary stuff. They don't want to be it. You guys are lucky. People are coming. They're wanting to know about the risk. They're wanting to know about the hazards or whatever it is that you're exposing to. That's why they've signed up in the adventure space. But it is key to make sure that briefing is done correctly and it's done repeatedly. Conduct of your activities. Make sure you've got qualified guides out there, people, please. And if there isn't an official qualification, like I said before, just make sure they're trained in your specific environment. And if you've been doing it for 30 years, 20 years, don't get blasé. It's when things happen. Okay. Risk awareness, like I say, it's about your entire staff. It's not just about a risk manager or an owner of a business taking risk seriously. It's about everybody. It's about bringing that culture into your business. So whether it's, like I mentioned, the lineup of staff that you might have in your various businesses, they all need to be risk aware. Safety and emergency protocols and signs are absolutely key. Okay, but they've got to be lived. They can't just be on a document and stashed away. So when it does come, I know we hate signs, but they're very important. You can do your brief. It's not about sort of having a indemnity and orientation chat and leaving at that, because people are way too excited to take that all in the beginning. So once you hop onto the boat, there's a little reminder sign to say 16 people max on the upper deck, and there's another little sign to say, please stay seated when we're moving, or hold onto the bars. I forget what it was, but it's all these subtle little reminders. And then you can be seen to be taking reasonable steps to keep your guests informed and risk aware. You know, at the entrance to a spot, you'll often find a waiver board or indemnity board that says, you come here and whatsoever, whosoever, howsoever, it's like it's not us. Those are perhaps a compliance element, but it's far better just to have a nice funky sign with a whole bunch of things that the guests themselves need to be aware of, because they then become their own eyes. And trust me, instinct will determine that they want to keep themselves safe and whatnot too. So don't hide away from risk. Don't hide away from hazards. Let them know. But just how you do it and how you put it up there from a marketing perspective is your own prerogative. But introduce guests to the risk and the environment that they're going on. And then obviously you should all have emergency protocols in place and whatnot as well. So operational reboot, please don't forget to do it, guys, because the tourists are coming. So from an insurance perspective, and this is like I said, this is where we play. We spent a huge amount of time obviously just trying to work with our clients. Our hearts beat with at the same pulse that you guys do. So whatever affects you affects us. We are the community. We do tourism. We do tourism just as hard as you do. We love it just as much as you do. So we worked very hard with most of you that are clients of ours, and I trust your brokers did the same. You know, you reduced covers. You put boats out of the water. We maybe reduced the cover to fire only instead of comprehensive cover on your vehicles. You cancelled your passenger liability because you had no fare paying passengers. Your revenue figures that you declared were clearly down, if not zero. So all of those, your forecast revenue has got to be declared. It's difficult to forecast at this stage, but just reboot it, relook at it. Connect with the specialist broker, connect with your broker that you've got now, and just go through what did you have before, because that's quite likely what you're going to need to go forward. And just get those reinstated, get those covers reinstated, and don't wait for the last minute, because you're going to be so excited when those first tourists come through that you're probably going to forget to do insurance because no one does it, or no one focuses on it too much. But that's what we're there for. So just reconnect and reinstate the covers that you've got. Then declare any changes in your operation. Like I say, there's a lot of us that have pivoted, that have had to do things slightly differently. Maybe you've introduced a different aspect to your business. You're doing hiking trails along the coast, and you're not limited to what you were doing before. Maybe you've taken the time and you've converted an old building into a little B&B because you've got a couple of extra rooms. Whatever the case is, I'm not sure. You've all had to do different things. Tim's clearly going to have to take out some product liability for his booze. Whatever the case might be, just reconnect and declare the operations your change in your operation to your broker. They can then tell you what covers you're going to require. And then consider new risks. Like I mentioned, for me, top of mind are definitely cyber. How many of you got cyber liability cover of some form? Hands up. Chris, excellent. 2. How many of you work online on a daily basis? Freaking all of you. Don't lie. It's not putting their hands up. So seriously, guys, it's a massive, massive risk. And for those of you who think that cyber is not going to happen to you, or something's not going to happen to you, because that's typically the stance we take, South Africa is 3rd in the world for the highest number of cyber attack victims globally. And it's not the corporates. Okay, it's the small to medium-sized businesses like yours who don't have the securities in place. It's a lot easier for a hacker or whatever to get into your system than it is Nedbank's, I promise you. And it's a lot easier to fly under the radar when you're asking people for 100K instead of 100 million. So that's where the danger is. It's because you're easy. And they're just taking smaller bits of money more frequently. So remember, risk, severity versus frequency. So yeah, there's the Nedbanks of the world and the whatnot. And that's shame I mentioned Mendo, that's absolutely unfair. But there are the larger corporates who are getting slammed for tens and tens of millions, if not billions. So that's low frequency, high severity. But you, here, high frequency, potentially low severity, but who of you want to take a 200K knock on a cyber attack or whatever the case might be? Or worse still, if they manage to get through and you haven't mitigated it, they manage to get through and you've got all your clients' data compromised and now on the system, which you are compelled to then report to every single one of your clients. So forget PR and all of that stuff, which is also going to damage your business. It's the liability suits that could follow. Okay, so cyber is key, and there's 2 ways to do it. You can mitigate it with tech stack, which is essentially it's a product, and it backs itself so much it's almost like a warranty product. So it monitors the deep and dark web, it does brand protection, it does all of that sort of stuff, and it mitigates risk, so it stops it from happening. But sometimes it gets through, and if that is the case and you have a breach of data, then you need your cyber liability, which is a little bit more complex, but it essentially pays out if you are shown to be negligent. And often they come hand in hand. That tech stack comes and it sits under a liability product. But anyway, not too much detail today. Just go out there, please, and ask about cyber liability risk and how it can be protected. Directors and officers liability as well for those of you who have got management teams. It's getting personal these days. It's not just about suing companies, it's about suing directors who had a very, not necessarily, they call it directors, but it's officers as well, so it's management. Anybody who has an operational influence on the business at a decision-making level can be held personally liable if the company fails in some respect or another. So these covers are, I know they seem like extras and it's like, shit, we can hardly pay our current premiums, whatever the case might be, but they're important covers to protect you as individuals and obviously your businesses as well. So, I'm not sure what time I've got there. Foster. Not much. Okay. There you go. Incident management process. So incident management, just very quickly, in the last 15 years, we've managed probably 10,000 cases around Africa. Okay. We do approximately 50 cases a month when things are ticking along. And 7% of those are essentially have the potential to change people's lives, either in a medical and health respect or from a liability perspective. Okay. And that's what an incident looks like. It's not calling an ambulance. All right. This is the hospitality tourism industry. It means PR, it means dispatching, dispatching medical services or even security services. 33% increase in security related incidents now. It's not just medical. It's PR, it's legal, it's post-operative care, it's remote incident management while stuff's going down and while the ambulance is getting there. It's an entire web. And trust me, 73% of instances where we've had staff that have actually got the process going, we've had to reverse. Because you may have a period where you need to stabilize. Share details with your team, communicate, get your communication devices ramped up, depending on where you're operating, and share those details with your guests, because you might be the one that goes down at the end of the day. And very quickly, that last little session was a bit of a sprint, but thanks for listening. I am here for the next couple of days, or today and tomorrow, and I'd love to chat more around this topic. So thanks very much.